Shereen Bhan. We're on board an Akasa Airlines flight and we're here to mark the second anniversary of the airline. In India, given the landscape that aviation has seen over the past few years, it is not just a celebratory relief for the entire ecosystem, which includes the government, the airline, of course, but the airport operators as well, and of course the consumers. When an airline marks a milestone of its existence, it has, of course, been a much more stable environment when we talk about ATF, but there are other challenges that have come in the way, especially as far as the challenges with Boeing are concerned. To understand what the journey over the past 2 years has been like, but more importantly, what the flight path ahead looks like, joining me now is the team at Akasa, Vinay, Dube, Belson, Coutinho. Many thanks for joining us. Congratulations, as I said, on completing 2 years here of flying in the Indian space. Vinay, let me start by asking you, was there a checklist of deliverables that you wanted to achieve by year 2, and have those been marked?
So the answer is yes and no. And the reason I'll say yes and no is because there was an initial checklist, and all of those have been ticked off. And then we added more to it, and those have been ticked off, and then we added more to it, and this process continues.
So what have been the big hits and the big misses?
Actually, there haven't been any misses, and let me explain. So growth was one that we knew we would have, and Shereen, you know this is not just about Akasa, but this is about India, right? India is growing, aviation is in its infancy, and we were part of this growth journey. I think what has been particularly happy for us is how we have exceeded customer expectations in terms of both service and reliability. Right? When you're growing 300+% as we have, 50+% in this financial year, you would expect that might, potentially strain the operating environment. And that's the part that I just take my hat off to the 4,000+ employees that Akasa have for maintaining the reliability that we've been able to exhibit over these last couple of years. So very pleased with that.
I'll get to operations in just a second, but Benson, let me ask you as well, from a marketing perspective, getting a new brand off the ground, so to speak, isn't an easy task, but what's been the big lesson, what's been the big learning for you from this?
I think, thanks to the team behind when we started to set this up, it made it easy to start with. I think the conviction is always to build an airline that is a happy airline, happy employees first, and of course, investment in our training, in the product and service that we put in would ultimately bring us to where we are today. So service excellence was the name of the game for us, and that's a culture that we're building, and we're super proud that each and every employee has stood up, taken the values of Akasa forward, and we're so happy to see customer feedback coming organically, right from the first flight passengers have taken, and we see repeat customers time and again on our flights, and this simply tells us that what we've done, what we've tried to do, has really helped and made a difference in Indian aviation, and we're super happy with
Where are the sneakers? I was expecting the two of you to be in the sneakers.
Soon enough.
Okay. Let's talk about the road ahead now. 24 aircraft in operation. In your 19th month, you decided to go international as well. You've got a sizable order, 150 aircraft that you placed in January this year. What should we expect realistically in terms of capacity addition for this financial year?
So this financial year, we've said that we will grow by 50% compared to the last. Last financial year, we grew 300% compared to the previous. So 50%, 300%, these are numbers that we haven't seen before for an airline at this stage. And by the way, we're not talking about going from 1 to 2. These are on a pretty fast base. I mean, I think we've talked about it before, but Akasa in its first year has broke, every conceivable record globally in the 123-year history of global aviation. So 50% in this particular fiscal year.
And when we last spoke, you said that you were also looking at doubling pilots. What is the position on that front? Are you still going ahead with that plan?
Yeah, in fact, Shereen, this is, as Belson talked about, we're building not just a brand for our consumers, but being employee-centric from day one is something we've talked about, right? We've talked about being, having service leadership, cost leadership, employee centricity, and building this on a platform of world-class safety. So employee centricity has been a super important element of who we are. I'm happy to report that we've got over 800 or approximately 800 pilots already with Akasa. So at this point, we've actually stopped pilot hiring.
Okay.
We've got, and part of the reason we've been able to attract pilots is because of our employee centricity, the patterns that we offer, the lifestyle patterns that we offer our employees, the focus we've got on training, the new generation of aircraft that we're flying, we're very, the respect and transparency with which we hope we treat them, and not just pilots, but all our employees. So at this point, specifically, we're no longer hiring pilots, and we will be that way for some period of time.
Okay, and the legal issues that you had with pilots, is that a thing of the past? And what have been the lessons learned from that experience?
To be honest, I think we're all of that is well in the past, and for us, we're just focusing on making sure that we continue down our path of being employee centric, and so that's where we are today.
Let's talk about with the international expansion now, and you are hoping to add more routes as you fly international. In terms of the way that you market the brand, I mean, in India is one story, but globally is another. What's the plan? What's the strategy going to be?
I think we're going to stick to our core of what we bring to the consumer, which is service excellence. We build this airline where people are going to make the difference in terms of the service that we render. Of course, you see the product, the comfortable seats, the cushions that we invested in, the gracious, generous leg room that we have, to the meals that we offer. I think that all put together, creates that Akasa experience that we now are super proud to take it to the world. The service excellence through our people is going to be the differentiator. We said it when we started the airline that if India needs an airline, it needs an airline that is warm, friendly, and creates a very inclusive travel environment. And I think we've stuck to that, and we see tremendous amount of feedback that comes to us that our people made the difference. Our people were welcoming, our people were friendly. We try to create an inclusive environment right from the Braille menu card to the safety Braille cards that we have. We even fly pets on our flights. I think that is the core essence of us, and we're going to take that spirit of Indian hospitality to the world now.
Well, speaking of Indian hospitality, let's talk about numbers now, Vinay. In terms of what you're being able to do on revenue, what you're being able to do on yields, and what you're being able to do on costs. If I were to look at your FY23 performance, FY24, your numbers are yet to be disclosed. Have losses come down, and do you have a path to profitability that you can share with us?
Yeah, I think the answer to both is yes. So to give you a number, our EBITDA margins improved by over 30 points, which is very significant. And so losses for early stage companies, not just airlines, but early stage companies are not surprising. And so we will have losses, but our margins continue.
But are they sustainable? Not surprising, but are they sustainable is the question.
Well, for us, we don't plan on sustaining them, right? You asked about a path to profitability. So as we continue to expand, and with the expansion and with the evolution of our network, our cost structures get much more competitive. And then as the brand gets known, as we start taking more corporate consumers, as we expand internationally, as our revenues get better. And so the plan absolutely is to be profitable here, and to be profitable here amongst one of the fastest companies or airlines that will turn to profitability. We're not going to put timelines on that, Shereen.
But would it be fair, to draw comparisons with Indigo? I mean, that's been around for 18 years now, but they turned profitable around the 4th year. Would that be a realistic time frame for Akasa?
Again, I wouldn't want to put time frames on that, but let's take two pieces of what I've said. So the one part I've said is we've got a path to profitability. The other part I've said is that our path to profitability is going to be on par with the finest companies in the world, not just the finest airlines, right? And so you can draw a parallel to any of the other top-notch companies in terms of our path to profitability, because we've got this really solid financial foundation that we've built.
Well, speaking of that financial foundation, I want to understand from you, what more can you do to aid revenues? What do you see as being the big revenue drivers? Of course, going international, as you mentioned before, it's more profitable than flying domestic. What's the bump up that gives you? What's the kind of headroom that provides you? And on the cost side, I mean, what more can you do, in terms of better utilization and so on and so forth?
Yeah. So on the revenue side, and I'll try and keep my answer brief because I could talk about revenues and costs for 2 hours here. But on the revenue side, international provides a big bump to us. As we scale the network, we're able to attract more corporate travel. That tends to be a higher yielding form of travel. So that's another bump to us. As we build scale, you're able to offer greater frequency, and with greater frequency, you get a higher share of consumers. As your brand gets known in the market, you tend to get a lot more repeat customers. Repeat customers tend to want to fly Akasa, that also come with higher yield. So on the revenue side, these are just some of the items. Like I said, there are 10 more that I won't mention. On the cost side, there are 3 or 4 principal drivers. The biggest of that is scale, right? You only need one CEO for 24 aircraft. You also need only one CEO for 200 aircraft, right? In this manner, scale gives us a huge bump. International expansion, and just to put some numbers, today we are 11% of our capacity is flying internationally, right? And this is, imagine, we weren't flying internationally until the 28th of March. So international expansion is a big element of our strategy. We're already at 11%, and international flying comes at a lower cost. Fuel, for example, does not carry the same taxes internationally as they do domestically. So scale, international. Utilization is marginal for us because we're very close to what we would consider a best-in-class utilization.
So you're doing what, about 12 and a half hours
that's
per
correct.
aircraft?
Very, very close to it. And so utilization is one where we'll get maybe marginal bumps over a period of time, but not much. Scale is a big element. International is a big element. And then Shereen, as we grow over time, so if you fast forward, let's say 5-7 years, because you tend to be quite forward looking in your outlook, we haven't begun to get the larger equivalents of the 321, which is the MAX 10, right? Those will come maybe 2-3 years out, and those come with a higher number of seats. And by the way, higher number of seats does not equal cramped. Boeing has a best-in-class legroom, as people who have traveled on Akasa, but those come with a very different cost profile. So the elements like that, that have a benefit on the cost side.
You spoke about Boeing, and I want to understand from you what you expect now in terms of actual deliveries, and whether you are concerned with what Boeing is dealing with globally at this point in time, and potentially impacting your plans, your expansion.
Yeah, so I think whenever any one of our partners, and Boeing's a very close partner of ours, is going through and addressing certain issues, we certainly feel for them and are part of this journey with them. Do we have concerns? First, let me be unequivocal. There's no safety concern that we have on all the aircraft that are currently flying or the aircraft that continue to be certified. I think there's also no hiding from the fact that we haven't got as many deliveries as we potentially wanted. But I just want to address that head on, because when you're growing 300% and 50%, the issues related to delivery for us, Shereen, are a question of whether it's going to be 50 or 60. Either way, it's going to be much more than most other companies, let alone airlines, have ever done. Right? So we're not that concerned. And we're here with Boeing every step of the way.
So what is the expected delivery number that we should bake in?
Yeah, Shereen, we've stopped providing delivery guidance, and I don't mean that as a joke, but part of that has been because
you just don't know.
No, it's not that.
Okay,
it's not that. We're in touch with Boeing continuously. At any given point in time, we've got guidance. But if the guidance is off by 1 or 2, then the story becomes 1 less plane delivered or 2 less plane delivered versus the fact that we grew 300% or versus the fact that we grew 50%. Or, as Belson said, the fact that we are not just, the fastest growing airline in the history of aviation, but we're also India's most reliable and on-time airline. So the story tends to move to something that is not necessarily germane to what we are trying to offer our consumers.
Okay, let's talk about what you're trying to do on the technology side, because that's been a part of your story that you've been trying to tell as well. Digitization, now AI, so on and so forth. Benson, what's the plan there? What should we expect from a customer's point of view?
Absolutely, I think tech and analytics is a part of our DNA. And for us, no conversation starts or ends without these 2 topics of tech and data. Right from the time a consumer thinks of Akasa till the time his bag arrives at the baggage belt is where tech enables us to play that role. Simple things that we've done over the last few months, Shereen, is the moment you're at the airport, you'll be getting a notification of which gate your flight is going to be boarding. The moment the aircraft just lands, you'll have a notification saying which baggage belt your bag is going to arrive at. I think these are small touches but makes life so easy for a consumer. We're using technology not just to throw it on the consumer, because we believe and we know that we have a lot of first-time travelers now flying. We're super proud of the growth story of not just Akasa, but India as a growth story. And we want to cater to that consumer. So use technology, use data, use AI. We're doing some experimentation to make life simple and easy for the consumer at every touch point, as I talked about. I think that's the investment and focus that we're making.
So what kind of investments have you made in technology so far? And do you see the investments on tech going up significantly?
Absolutely. I think the tech and data investment continues to grow. Vinay is the biggest proponent of having some really high quality talent to just not have data created or curated, but use that data to make decisions and use it to take informed decisions to even create new products and features. I think that's going to continue. We're going to invest not just in the consumer facing side, across different back-end systems, including our training systems, right? For example, we have a very captive training center of about 40,000 square feet of 3 centers across Bangalore and Delhi. We're using data and we're using tech to track utilization of our classrooms, utilization of our trainers, so that we just don't go on expanding the square feet that we have, but how can we optimize that to make it more sort of sustainable in terms of using that data.
Since we're talking about technology, let me ask the two of you what just happened with this global outage on account of the CrowdStrike glitch that threw mostly aviation out of gear, not just here in India, but globally as well. What was it like for you on that day, actually, the 48 hours of complete mayhem?
It was, so Shereen, this is one where I'm going to boast a bit, because, and I don't have a statistic, I'm gonna caveat a little bit, but Akasa on that 19th of July, at the end of it, didn't cancel a single flight. What that was like and what enabled it was every single Akasa employee across airports, across in-flight, across our operations control department, across social media, reservations, call centers, came forward above and beyond to make sure the consumers are taken care of. Right. So it was very difficult.
Everyone tried, but how did you manage that? Because we had people handing out physical boarding passes and so on and so forth. So everyone was trying, but what did you do to ensure that you were actually up in the air?
Yeah. So when people go through business continuity drills, when people go through drills related to other such eventualities. This is what these drills prepare and train us for. And even though we're a young company, we've got this sort of hyper focus on safety. We've got this hyper focus on whether it comes to business continuity or drills like this, to make sure that our customers don't get inconvenienced. So our airports teams, our tech teams, our call center teams have been practicing these drills for the last 2.5 years. And this is where their spirit and their training came to bear, Shereen. So how do we do it? It's both through spirit and training.
But is there a contingency plan outside of the training? I understand, but even on the tech side, is there a contingency plan in light of what just happened to prevent something like this from happening again?
Absolutely, Shereen. And in fact, I must say that one of our contingency plan came to the fore, and the tech contingency plan. For example, our IT tech teams had the foresight, and as a part of the process, had the latest cut of our passengers booked on us just before that downtime that happened. And that's where the tech came into play. For that day, even for day 1+, the data of consumers who are booked on us was available for our frontline staff. Imagine if that didn't exist or this wasn't there. While manual boarding passes would still be a part of the process, but without a passenger manifest, without knowing who's actually booked on you, could have been, a worst nightmare or a worse disaster for us to happen. But that process with the tech that we had put in place to have consumer data accessible to us even when the systems were down came to the fore to make the team deliver what they delivered.
And just to give you an example, this was a very deliberate decision we took a while ago we're a 100% cloud company.
Right.
But we made a very specific decision that the cloud that we will be on for our backups is going to be a distinct and separate cloud from the base data that we have.
Okay.
So some of these very specific decisions that we made allowed us to be able to deliver what we did on the 19th of July.
Well, Vinay, I also now want to talk to you about the ability to raise funds and the need to raise funds at this point in time. Given the expansion plans, do you need more cash? Do you need more capital? Do you have access to it?
Yeah, so the answer is, as we've said for a while, we're a well-capitalized company today. It is very important for us to continue to be well-capitalized, and we think we have, as much access to capital as anybody, because I think.
What is the current runway?
It's our runway is for the foreseeable future, right? Just to be. Very definitive about that. We're well capitalized, our runways for the foreseeable future, but just like any company, we're always open to conversations all over the place. But being well capitalized is an extremely important element of really creating a durable company. And we will continue to be well capitalized.
You said you're open to the idea of having conversations. Are you having conversations at this point in time? Who could you potentially talk to?
Yeah, Shereen, I would say every good company, and I would hope that Akasa is part of this every good company, has conversations for their entire life. So we've been having conversations with people for 4 years.
Right. Private
and
equity?
We continue with every manner of people. Our conversations are not restricted to people. But again, I don't want to distract that because then the conversations become the story. I want to make sure I come back to the fact that we are very well capitalized today.
But would getting an airline, for instance, on board be something that you would consider? Would private equity be the consideration? I mean, what would be potentially a possible
I think, Shereen,
idea that you're looking at?
I think at this point, when I'm saying we're a well-capitalized company, then there's really nothing more to talk about specific ideas, right? Because these are just conversations one continues to have, right? I mean, you take the best companies in the world, the ones that have, hundreds of billions in their bank account. So you take a company like Apple, I am 100% sure they also continue to have conversations despite 100 billion in the bank account.
Right.
So I want to make sure that my response is taken within that context because we remain well capitalized today. So there's really nothing beyond that I want to convey.
And also on the Jhunjhunwala family's involvement. I mean, Rakesh was here when you launched the flight, the first flight. The involvement of the Jhunjhunwalas going forward.
It is their commitment to Akasa is as strong today as it's ever been. So this is Rakesh's legacy, and it's very important for the Jhunjhunwala family to make sure his legacy is protected. They are absolutely amazing as human beings. I think Rakesh would be proud. I hope Rakesh would be proud of us in terms of what we've been able to achieve. We just couldn't be happier with the Jhunjhunwala family and the representatives of the Jhunjhunwala family. They're as supportive as they get.
Has there been any additional fund infusion from them, or
no, and we haven't asked. We haven't needed it, and therefore there've been no additional fund infusion.
Okay, let's talk about now specifics in terms of where next as far as your international expansion is concerned, and on the domestic side as well. What more are you adding on?
Yeah, so internationally we're flying forward today. We're selling Kuwait, which is our 5th destination.
Are you worried about what's happening in the Middle East, and could that potentially impact your plans?
Anything that that might affect human life in any part of the world is a concern. At the end of the day, we're talking about human beings. and human beings suffer. Certainly, we are and remain, very concerned and continue to follow any issue that might potentially affect Akasa employees or our consumers. So at this moment in time, we've not had to change anything, but we'll continue to follow this sort of evolution of this situation very closely. In terms of what next, we've got now with this and with Kuwait, the 5th destination in the Middle East. We've said from day one we'll be flying across the Southeast Asian destinations. We'll be flying across the Indian subcontinent, whether it's Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh, the Maldives, etc.
Right.
These are all things that I think people should look forward to in the coming days, as well as perhaps more in the Middle East too. Domestically in India, we've got lots of expansion, both in terms of depth to the existing 22 destinations that we have, as well as new destinations.
So, by the end of the financial year and this calendar year, potentially, what could we be talking about in terms of daily flights?
Boy, that's hard to say. That's hard to say, Shereen. I'd say, for us, the end of the fiscal year is a 50% growth in capacity as judged by seat kilometers. And the reason I'm sort of hesitating a bit is because some of that growth is going to come by a more, greater number of takeoffs.
Okay.
But they'll be shorter. Some of that will come through, lower takeoffs, but through longer flying. And that's the level of planning that we do. We do planning on seat kilometers,
right,
not necessarily in terms of departures.
So revenue per seat kilometer, what is the kind of bump up that you expect?
Those are things that we have not, disclosed. But as I told you earlier, the fact that we'll be flying international, the fact that our brand is getting known, the fact that we're getting more corporate customers, certainly we'll see not just the growth, but the increase in unit revenues as well. But we're not providing guidance in terms of exactly how much that is.
One of the things that customers look for are loyalty programs, even though they're patchy in most cases. But is that something that you're going to be considering at some point?
Not at this point in time.
No?
But we definitely believe that our consumers needs to be rewarded and recognized. Whether we do it as a part of a sort of a frequent flyer program where you earn points and stuff like that, or can you do it in a way smarter way? Today, retail has changed the way consumers interact. Gratification is instant. So potentially, Akasa can look at data, use insights to recognize and reward customers in a much more smarter manner.
Okay, so outside of frequent flyer miles, reward and recognize customers.
Yeah, so it's the if I may jump in here, it's the personalization that we're looking for, and how you personalize travel for people that travel frequently and that are loyal to us. So it's a this word personalization has been around for decades, but we think that's the avenue for us to go, at least in the very immediate term.
Okay.
And use data to be able to personalize journeys for people who are both traveling the first time, but more importantly, people that have been traveling often.
So loyalty program not on the cards at this point in time. Let me ask you about another development that's taken place with the market leader deciding to offer business class routes on some routes at this point in time, and there is a gap in the market. Would that be something that you would consider, perhaps not now, but sometime in the future?
Not in the short to medium term. At this point in time,
because it just adds to the complexities of operations.
It does. Our business model is a business model as you see here. We take great pride in the comfort of our seats, as Belson was talking about, the legroom that we offer, the food, the reliability. We take great pride in the training and the experience that our employees on the ground and in flight take. We think we've got a consumer experience that's right up there compared to any airline in the world, and that's our focus, Shereen. At this point, we have no view to change that focus.
And so, code share agreement or being part of a global alliance, is that on the cards or is that off the table for now as well?
I think these are two very separate questions. A global alliance versus interlines and code shares. Global alliance, I think, is something that we can punt down the road. We haven't even really thought about that. But as one flies internationally, you tend to think about interlines and code shares. So those are things that we've started to think through, but we wanted to wait just a little bit. I think our 2-year mark, is a good time for us to start thinking about it, which is what we've done. And part of the reason is because reliability was such a an important element of what we wanted to achieve. Your first question was, what have we ticked off?
Yeah.
Being India's most on-time and reliable carrier was one of those that we had to tick off. And codeshare and interlines tend to add a little bit of complexity. So once we've achieved this now and we're able to sustain and maintain the reliability, we'll start thinking of factors like codeshares and interlines.
In terms of market share for July, I think you've closed at just under 5%. And of course, you talked about your on-time performance. But what is the aspiration in terms of market share? And how do you see the landscape? You've got the Air India Vistara merger. You've, of course, got SpiceJet, where capacity is significantly constrained. There is no GoAir any longer. How do you see the dynamics? I'll get both of you to respond to that. Vinay, you want to take that?
Sure. I'll be happy to. And Shereen, you may not be satisfied with our answer because we've never ever focused on market share.
I know you've told me that.
Like for example, will we be close to 5% in July? I don't know. We'll find out maybe in 1 or 2 or 3 weeks when the numbers come out. What we'll be in August, we don't know. I think naturally our market share will increase. We'll go from 5 to 6 to 7 to 12 plus just because of the rate of our growth. But that's not something we're focused on, right? We genuinely are focused on, our employees. We're genuinely focused on service excellence, safety, financial stability. Market share is just a result of all of that. But I think it's going to be the next decade, addressing what I think, maybe the essence of your question was. I think for the next decade, the country as a whole is going to continue to grow. I think it's going to be great for consumers. I think it's going to be great for airlines as well. Consumers are going to face, multiple choices when it comes to air travel. So I think it's.
Are they really? I mean, we're not really spoiled for choice today in India as far as aviation is concerned. There are very limited options actually.
I think
which is perhaps a good thing for you, isn't it?
It's so again, not a good or a bad thing. I think getting stability in terms of the airlines that do exist, having a very strong financial foundation is always beneficial, right? When airlines go under, it's never good for consumers. It's never good for for airline employees. So yes, I think a fewer number of airline groups, so to speak, is good for consumers in the long run because we'll get financial stability of the airlines. But the choices I meant were choices in terms of routes they can fly to. Right, and the choices of airlines on those routes, and I think that's where airline is going to double, aviation is going to double and triple here over the course of the next 10 years.
But Vinay, you've been around and you've done this a long time. So let me ask you about what is it about the Indian market, which leads to an existential crisis every few years? I mean, we've just got the GoAir liquidation process now starting. Why do you believe we're still in this situation? I mean, what do we need to address both from a policy perspective, from an airline's perspective, to not be at this path every few years?
So Shereen, that's a wonderful question, and I have an answer. In fact, it was with this answer in mind that I had the courage to actually start Akasa, right? Because normally you think, why does someone having all this data decide to start an airline in the middle of the pandemic?
I didn't want to go down that cliched joke route about the easiest way to lose $1 billion.
Right. So the data point that I have that most people don't see is the fact that there were 9 airlines in the US that all made money for 10 consecutive years prior to COVID. I just want to make sure because there are many numbers. So 9 airlines, not 1, not 2, but 9 airlines that all made money for 10 consecutive years, right? That's not typically what most people associate with aviation. And by the way, the top 3 airlines out of these 9 had a market share of less than 4%. So one does not have to be super large to make money. And it doesn't need to be one airline that makes money, it could be multiple, and you could make money on a sustained basis. So
if they're operating in key niches?
No, so where that's coming from, Shereen, is a maturity of the market itself. What people forget is that aviation itself is 40 years old, right? The US was the first industry to deregulate in 1982. We deregulated in India much later, in 1993. There's a 10-year gap. So my view is the next 10 years are exactly, this is exactly what we're going to see in India. In the next 10 years, you will see stability of airlines. You'll see Akasa be that airline that will be in the top 30 airlines in the world. You'll see the stability of airlines, and it's just because we are following maybe on a 10-year lag from a maturity perspective. Now, will it help? In terms of mature or more evolution, continued evolution of airports and investments that we're having? Absolutely. But the government is going down that path. So I think this is something that just comes with an industry that's maturing.
Well, let me end by asking both of you. We've talked about the tailwinds, and you just gave us a very comprehensive view on the potential tailwinds that will propel the growth of the airline. But if I were to ask you to classify for me the top 3 headwinds, what would those be? I mean, ATF is not in your control. We don't know what's going to happen with that.
Most things are, whether it's foreign exchange or ATF, etc. These are out of our control. Our headwinds are really just, delivering the consumer experience that we take such great pride in, right? So as we scale, can we continue to be India's most on-time airline? As we scale, can we continue to have that focus on training such that we get the kind of compliments we get related to our cabin crew or our ground service? As we scale, can our technology scale? So these are all very much inward looking. And when you have a set of professional aviators like we do, because that was, to your previous question, that was the other element of it. With the maturity, most people realize that this is not a glam business, right? This is a hardcore business that needs to be run by professionals. And as you start seeing that in India, you'll also get the stability. But Shereen, these are things that, we spend a lot of time thinking. So in terms of headwinds, they're really nothing other than the single one which says, run a good airline. It's as simple as that. You run a good airline, and the demand
and hopefully
is
run
out
a good,
there.
Profitable airline, and that soon.
You run a good airline, and the profitability absolutely will follow, given the base that we built. Right?
In terms of, you talk about headwinds, I think the biggest opportunity that we have, 2 years down the line now, building the product, the service, people, and the culture that we build in, I think the opportunity for us is to be consistent, right? And if we are consistent in what we build as a foundation, I think we have a long runway out there to be one of the best airlines or a best brand or a service brand in the world, not just an airline in India.
Well, that's the aspiration and that's the dream that you have for Akasa. Belson and Vinay, many thanks for joining us here on CNBC-TV18. We wish the two of you the very best of luck, and the team at Akasa as well. Appreciate you giving us a sense of what the road ahead looks like and what the flight path will hold. Many thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Shereen.
With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of On the Record. We will be back again with a lot more conversation, but for now, from all of us here on the team, goodbye and many thanks for watching.